During the most critical situations of World War II, each side adopted measures that are very similar, because if there is something that they all had in common, it was their conviction that they would not surrender under any circumstances. So in this program, we are going to analyze how the orders issued by both the Germans and the Soviets of not a step back were, and we are also going to see the famous penal battalions in which the most undisciplined soldiers were integrated. First of all, let's go back to July 28, 1942, this being the exact moment in which Stalin issued his famous Order 227, known as the "Not One Step Back" order. In it, the Soviet leader stated the following: "The enemy throws new forces to the front regardless of heavy losses and penetrates deep into the Soviet Union, seizing new regions, destroying our cities and towns, and raping, looting, and killing the Soviet population. Fighting continues in the Voronezh region, near the Don in the south, and at the gates of the North Caucasus. The German invaders penetrate towards Stalingrad on the Volga and want at all costs to capture the Kuban and the North Caucasus, with their oil and grains. Part of the troops of the Southern Front, following the sours of panic, have left Rostov and other cities without severe resistance and without orders from Moscow, covering their banners with shame. The population of our country, who loves and respects the Red Army, begins to lose heart and faith in the Soviet Army, and many curse our army for leaving our people under the yoke of the German oppressors and running east. Some stupid people at the front calm down by saying that we can go further east, that we have a lot of territory, a lot of population, and there will always be plenty of bread for us. They want to justify the infamous behavior at the front. But such talk is a falsehood, useful only to our enemies. Every commander, Red Army soldier and political commissar must understand that ours are not unlimited. The territory of the Soviet state is not a desert, but people, workers, peasants, intelligentsia, fathers, mothers, wives, brothers, and children. The territory of the Soviet Union that the enemy has captured and intends to capture is the bread for our population and army. They are products such as metal and fuel for industry, and the factories and production plants that supply arms and ammunition to our army. After the loss of the Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic republics, Donetsk, and other areas, we have much less territory, much less people, and less raw materials. We have lost more than 70 million people, more than 800 million pounds of bread a year, and more than 10 million tons of metal. Now we have no predominance over the Germans in human reserves or in bread reserves. Going back further means wasting ourselves and despising our homeland at the same time. Therefore, it is necessary to eliminate the discourse that we have the ability to go backwards endlessly, that we have a lot of territory, that our country is large and rich, that there is a large population, and that bread will always be abundant. Such talk is false and parasitic, weakening us and benefiting the enemy. If we don't stop going backwards, we will run out of bread, fuel, metal, raw materials, factories and plants, and railways. This now leads to the following conclusion. It's time to finish retiring. Not one step back. That should now be our main motto. In these words, Stalin is exposing the critical situation in which his country finds itself after the Germans launched the attack against all odds, because without a doubt, Stalin thought that in that year of 1942 he would be the one who would lead the attacks. In any case, although this order seems something new, the truth is that there is nothing new in it, since iron discipline, severe punishments, and not withdrawing without the corresponding authorization had already been Stalin's way of acting since the Germans attacked in June 1941. What this order truly indicates is the new crisis that Stalin suffered on a personal level, seeing that he had once again been wrong, and that all his plans for that summer of 1942 had gone to waste. On the other hand, one of the main elements that this order included was the creation of penal battalions in which all those soldiers who had shown indiscipline had to be assigned. Although this was already done in the German army, from the summer of 1942 it also began to be done in the Red Army. Thus, between 1942 and 1945 some 600 penal battalions were formed in which some 430,000 soldiers who had shown said disciplinary offenses were integrated. As ordered by Stalin, these units were assigned difficult and dangerous missions, such as frontal assaults on enemy positions, clearing mines, or impossible defenses. This caused these battalions to suffer 50% casualties in practically any action. Because the men that made up these battalions had already shown disciplinary offenses, and their confidence in them was very low, other blockade units were placed in their rear with the mission of shooting these soldiers if they decided to flee again. The studies that have been carried out on whether this order was effective or not have determined that it was, since it was a boost to morale for most of the Soviet divisions that were doing their duty. And it is that the application of this type of measures does not have as its main objective to punish the offenders, which of course they do, but rather to dissuade any soldiers who are thinking of deserting or not fulfilling their tasks. In other words, the objective of the harsh punishments is to encourage people who do not break the law to continue fulfilling their mission. Having seen the Soviet case, let us now look at the German case. Although in a similar way to the Soviet, the withdrawals in the German army were not allowed without the express authorization of Hitler since December 1941. However, little by little this way of acting was penalized more and more, until reaching to the summer of 1944, in which the main slogan was to resist at all costs and until the last consequences. Despite this, it was not until the first months of 1945 that someone gave an order similar to the one Stalin had given in that summer of 1942. This was given by Himmler at the end of January 1945, who had been appointed commander and head of the Vistula Army Group on January 24. Thus, this order was called "Death and Punishment to All Those Who Do Not Comply with Their Duty," and it was the result of a totally desperate situation that of course Himmler was not able to solve. Since the Soviets attacked on January 12 with their offensive known as the Vistula Oder, the German defenses in Poland had been obliterated, and the Red Army advanced practically without opposition in the direction of Berlin, standing at the end of the month only 70 kilometers from the capital. This was the context in which Himmler, endorsing the order that Stalin had given at the time, promulgated this law with the title, "Death and Punishment to All Those Who Do Not Comply with Their Duty." It basically meant that anyone who retreated west without a warrant would be arrested and executed. It should be noted that it was not only applied to low-ranking soldiers, since several provincial governors, who had abandoned their garrisons without any warning, were executed. In addition, in the series of orders that Himmler issued during those days, German women were prohibited from feeding or helping the retreating German soldiers in any way. If they did, they would face severe penalties. Himmler's last two contributions were notes that said the following: "After harsh punishments that will last for several weeks, the day will come when the German territories will be free again." Finally, Himmler included the following sentence: "God our Lord, He has never abandoned our people and has always helped the brave in the hour of need." Given this, let us now analyze the German penal battalions, which, although they were not as numerous as the Soviet ones, are worth mentioning. The Germans had several types of these battalions, and depending on the crime that the soldier had committed, as well as his circumstances and origin, he was sent to one battalion or another. To give an example, there were the 500 trial battalions, the camp prisoner battalions, or the 999 penal division. In total, it is estimated that some 90,000 men were part of this type of unit, from 1941 to 1945. Some of them were criminals who had been convicted of civil or military crimes, others were deserters or even political opponents of the Hitler government. Their main tasks, as in the Soviet penal battalions, were to carry out the most dangerous missions possible, which generally led to very high casualties. Recovering bodies or material, clearing minefields, suicidal counterattacks, or defending lost positions were their main missions. On the other hand, it is estimated that during the entire war, the German army shot some 23,000 of its own soldiers who had committed desertion and who were not valid for this type of unit either. And well, up to here this curious program on this quite unknown subject. What do you think? Would you consider that these measures were effective? We have used the book of Stalin's Wars and Antony Beevor's Berlin, among others, for its preparation. We say goodbye here. Thank you all for being part of this community, and especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and we'll see each other here as always, next Thursday and Sunday. See you soon.